Hi, this is Anthony Parent of IRS Medic, and in this podcast, we're going to be talking about what your constitutional rights they mean nothing to the U.S. tax code. That is, the U.S. tax code takes precedence over every other part of the law, including your own natural rights, and we can pretty much demonstrate this in this podcast. Joining me today are Keith Redman and John Richardson, and this is a sort of follow-up, continuing discussions with what we had from Tuesday. Good morning, gentlemen, to you. And we're a little bit behind, so I want to get right into it. And so I'm gonna put up a screen share of something that I think is really, really important. This is an article that I got from the Isaac Brock Society. It was published on April 27th, and it's really discussing U.S. citizenship stripping after the big case that sort of made it allowed people to have dual citizenships, and that in order to revoke your citizenship, you actually had to affirmatively do it. Claiming allegiance to another country, didn't do it. And this is sort of the test. And really, the part that I think we really should be focusing on today is the number two. Congress cannot enact laws and engage in practices that result in the forcible destruction of citizenship. And well, our point is here with everything going on is your citizenship has been destroyed because there doesn't really mean to be anything good that comes with it. It's just a host of obligations that hurt us again and again and again. And this is the part that sort of we were all discussing this, the Sudan crisis, because we think this is a really good example of how the United States of America operates and treats its citizens, how it thinks of them. And we've seen Sudan is under attack and people are required to leave the embassies. And, here's a little quote I got from this, China's response. China's rapid evacuation of 1,300 Chinese, the majority of China's citizens in Sudan, makes good on the country's promise to protect the growing number of Chinese residing overseas. Likewise, Germany's response, we have a humanitarian responsibility. And not only did Germany got all of their citizens evacuated, it also airlifted citizens of more than 30 other countries out of Sudan in a display of solidarity and cross-border cooperation. But when we get to the United States, that didn't really alert citizens in Sudan or really help them get out all that much and sort of drag their feet on it, this is the response that we get. Three former American ambassadors interviewed by the Christian Science Monitor, that's where I got the article, you can find the links in the comments, rejected the premise that America was stranding its citizens in Sudan. Each said the well-being of Americans citizens abroad is inculcated into the State Departments at every level. Well, there's a strong word for you there. A strong word will protect you. And now Dennis Jedd is explaining the situation for us, the former deputy chief of the mission of the U.S. Embassy in Liberia when it was evacuated in 1990, and former ambassador to Mozambique and to Peru, argues that much of the domestic criticism of U.S. caution is what we're stranding people in Sudan is called caution. That's nice. Is political. And here's what he gets to. Republicans are looking for another Benghazi, he says. They think that they were able to pin that on Hillary Clinton. They're looking for something to pin on President Joe Biden. Well, there is a non sequitur for you. There's a complete non sequitur that you didn't do this. Well, you know what? Now you're pointing the finger at something that isn't relevant to this particular situation. Or perhaps it is, but if it's relevant, it's not supporting you. So here's we are. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think of Keith? What do you think of the U.S.'s response in Sudan? Is it surprising you?
No, it's not. It's not surprising me at all. I mean, this is a typical response. This happened with Yemen. This happened with other situations that, where, God, there's so much I could say, but this just shows classically that there is no benefit with citizenship-based taxation. What do you get for it? What do you get? You can't, and in these other countries who don't practice citizenship-based taxation and practice residency-based taxation, they're able to get their citizens out. And here's the thing, is that if you happen to be an American in Sudan, but happen to have another nationality like France or Italy or Germany, guess what? You're in a better situation than if you're only American, because they will evacuate you.
Well,
so they will.
Great point on that, Keith. And you know what? And I think you're getting to the point is, I had some Twitter comments and I'm getting some pushback from people where I don't really believe in the concept of dual citizenship. I don't think you can.
Right. And I push back on you on that one as well. Yeah.
But the point, but I think, you're driving home the point though. Well, that's great, Anthony. That's wonderful that you can have that opinion. But you know what? I mean, and in all honesty, I'm against it too. But I wouldn't necessarily stop it myself. I wouldn't necessarily not do it. What I'm saying is it shouldn't be allowed. But I'm not saying I wouldn't do it myself for exactly this reason. For exactly and precisely this reason, because your U.S. citizenship is garbage. It is really total garbage. One thing we're forgetting about too is the disastrous evacuation from Afghanistan. There was a complete disaster too. But again, you're not allowed to criticize that, because then you're giving the Republicans are looking to pounce on the issue.
And this is the last point I'll make on this is this is not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing.
Right.
This is an American problem.
Exactly.
It's an American problem.
Right. And and as we saw, Germany is evacuating other countries in solidarity. And that's too. I want to be, in solidarity with every American and every human being on this issue. And we're being divided and we're being distracted, and unfortunately, too many people buy into the nonsense. So, John, what would you say? Anything to add on this? Did this surprise you at all? The United States' terrible response, and then the United States' terrible actions, and this sort of basic excusing and distraction by Ambassador Jet. Is this surprising to you whatsoever?
Well, there's an awful lot of analysis of this so far. I mean, who was it? A great American president said, facts are stubborn things. The facts are that America will not help its citizens. That's all.
All right. And there we go. And I have countless stories of this happening. If you get caught in another country, good luck. That's where that's where another passport can help you out. We have some comments here that I think are really helpful to kind of propel our country. This is the thing, and not only is it terrible to have, it's terrible to get rid of, right? The whole thing, it's awful all around, and not only is it awful to have, the process to get rid of it is awful. And we have people who are, this is like, there's people are lining up at embassies around the world, and then it's hard to get the service. It's hard to actually get the service to say, hey, I got to renounce. How do I do this? It's actually hard to get that. And then this comment from Terry right below it really sort of sums it up for me. No one would renounce if they could just live in peace. Think about it. Every other country's people can move elsewhere, get a job or start a business, and just get on with their life. They pay their taxes to the country hosting them. Then later, they're free to return home and resume their lives there. Not U.S. citizens, though. No siree. You are chattel, a slave. The nice twist after the extraordinary fleecing of $22,350 US, that's the cost it is to renounce, which is another outrage, is the part where you must swear, I am exercising my right of renunciation, relinquishes freely and voluntarily without force, compulsion, or undue influence placed upon me by any person when they know damn well that the U.S. government itself is forcing everyone away, right? I mean, there's no other reason why you would do it.
Exactly.
No other reason why you would renounce your U.S. citizenship except for how it makes your life impossible. There's no real, I mean, people do want to get their citizenship. It is still a valuable thing coming to the U.S., but leaving, it's a terrible thing. And of course they know it. Of course they know it. How could you not? And this is the point, and I want to get to this section here too, because this is what the commentary was commenting on. Was this part here, was the act performed voluntarily? Because this is what the law requires. In order to properly renounce your citizenship, you must be doing that voluntarily, that it is a product of your free will, free of undue influence of another, with an understanding that the nature of the act and a good general knowledge of its consequences. While difficult choices generally do not rise to the level of this duress, in situations of genuine economic or other duress where there is no alternative course of action, voluntariness might be negated. Well, that's the terrifying thing is you get to this, and this is, I think, something beyond a catch-22, because take a look at this. This is from this. I have the URL link, and this was something that was linked from Isaac Brock, if you want to check that out. This is the note made here, and it is really something else, because let's say that you are renouncing your citizenship because of the economic duress the U.S. tax code is causing, which is basically all people. Okay, let's say that that's what you're doing. Well, guess what? economic duress, and let's talk what about economic duress is. Economic duress involves the genuine inability of an individual to make a living for themselves and or their family or subsist in a foreign country by any means due to U.S. nationality. Well, okay, we covered a lot right there. That's wow, that's a lot. It does not mean the inability to secure foreign government employment, which would make sense. I don't think there's a constitutional right to foreign government employment, or indebtedness due to a mortgage or loan obligations, or difficulty opening or maintaining a bank account. Well, let's stop right there. We're not talking about difficulty opening or maintaining. We're talking about impossibility. We're talking about impossibility where you just can't do it. An individual who alleges economic duress as the basis for their commission of the expatriation must also show their personal circumstances abroad made it unreasonable for them to return to the United States to provide support for themselves or their family. You see what that is? It's like, well, if it's so hard for you overseas, then move back. So this is where I want John's opinion on this. John, so what do you think about this? You see, the thing is, like, if you're renouncing because of economic duress, well, actually, economic duress is something that's taking away your voluntary act to negate. Do you see? Am I looking at this wrong? It seems like the government, this is my point. If you're renouncing your citizenship because the United States government has made your life overseas impossible, well, they could actually, we're going to take away your right to renounce because you did that for duress. So you're still a U.S. citizen. Do you think my reading's way off here?
No, I don't think your reading is way off. This is all in the context of that article at the Isaac Brock Society in the comments. And let me just begin with a comment on the comments, okay? First of all, the language in the Afroyim case is Congress cannot do things that result in the forcible destruction of citizenship. That is, in my view, a very, very different thing from whether people were forced to renounce U.S. citizenship. Okay. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. If you look, for example, I looked at the comments a day or two ago, and there's a comment from somebody named Badger there as well, that I think lays out the problem fairly well, which makes the point simply that, these restrictions on being an American, these restrictions caused by and only by American citizenship. Okay. And there's no doubt that American citizenship is now a disability in the modern world. There's no question about it. Okay. Do result in the forcible destruction of citizenship. I mean, she ends her comment saying something like, were it not for these laws, I would still be a U.S. citizen today. I think, she said something to that effect. Now, there's no question that the value of the citizenship was being destroyed by these laws. But that is a logically different question from whether somebody is forced to renounce U.S. citizenship. I do not think that people are being absolutely positively, in a legal sense, right, in the sense that the State Department is looking at the renunciation ceremony. Of course, they're not being forced to renounce. They are perfectly free. And this is the key point. Americans are perfectly, absolutely 100% free to embrace, love, and accept the disability of being an American. They're perfectly free to do that. You look at the comments of these Wall Street Journal articles, and American residents hold up their hands and say, yes, by God, I accept the disabilities that come with American citizenship because it's such a great thing. But the point here is, and for anybody who's going to renounce, and of which many are, you are not renouncing under duress in the sense that they mean it. Okay, what they mean is somebody's holding a gun to your head. Rather, what you're doing is simply making a decision that you do not want to live with the kinds of disabilities that come only with American citizenship and with no other citizenship in the world.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I guess I see your point, Keith. Keith, any question? I mean, here's the thing. I guess this is, and this is where you get utterly frustrated. The Democrats are supposed to be the party of the good guy, and Republicans are, I don't know what they're supposed to be. I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
And, and this is where we get absolutely boggled by
Mhm.
the tribalism of people who will blindly believe these political parties. And I've given up on Republicans a long time ago. I mean, President Trump signed into act the transition tax. Like, well, that was utterly terrible and brutal, and that wasn't necessary. That wasn't necessary whatsoever to do. And we didn't get any relief. We had a hearing. We showed them the facts. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. And the Republicans were in control, and they could have done something, and they didn't. Magically, they just didn't have the time to do anything about this. On the other side of it, we have the Democrats who are claiming and distracting from the issue, and they're acting like. And I think this might be some of the issue that we get to. Let me just get the slide up here. It's something like this, that the issue is whitewashed. And this is an article that was just out from Forbes yesterday. It was Kathleen Petticord wrote this, which the article on itself, the content's all true. I couldn't find anything wrong with the article. And even at the end of the article, she says this. She says, don't make major life decisions based on taxes alone. Which great advice. Don't do that. But the problem with the article is it missed the biggest. Yes, it went over the foreign income tax exclusion. Yes, it went over the foreign tax credit. Yes, it went over the fact that expats have until June 15th to file their taxes. But it didn't mention any of the nightmares that are
Right.
forcing people to renounce their citizenship. So in a way, it's so misleading, and it's pumping it up. See how good overseas expats have. They have a foreign income exclusion. Boy, these people, they're getting off so easy.
And they never, and Anthony, it is never stated ever by the U.S. tax compliance professionals ever that foreign earned income exclusion is there, but they don't say that money you actually do get taxed on in the country in which you live.
Yeah,
it's not tax free. They never ever say that.
Right. Either way, with the foreign income exclusion, okay, that's great if you weren't taxed in the country that you're and there's some tax-free jurisdictions.
Right. Of course.
But where the jobs are, they tend to be where you're getting taxed. And yeah. So just sort of
it's not a free ride. It's
right,
not a free ride.
It's this article is written more like a sales pitch for all the benefits of being an expatriate, and not mentioning one of the horrific problems and crippling things that how the United States makes your life crazy. And she's just speaking about taxes, but and she does say, like, don't make this on taxes alone. So one of the other things you want to consider before you go live overseas is understand how the United States of America doesn't care about you other than to tax you, and they could just disregard you and totally ignore you, and you're on your own. And hopefully Germany will come and save you. Is basically where you're at.
Yeah. So can you go back to that article for just a second?
Yeah.
I basically agree with what you said about the article. All right. It's a fascinating example of how in a discussion, every component part of the discussion can be true on its face, but it adds up to a complete and absolute and utter distortion of reality. In many ways, that was one of the most offensive articles I have ever seen. Okay. And the reason is it's twofold. As you point out, first of all, it actually creates, what it does is it feeds into the resident American resentment of the foreign earned income exclusion with this idea that somehow Americans escape U.S. taxation if they move abroad, which is, of course, absolutely ridiculous. But where the most glaring omission is that it, of course, doesn't discuss the incredibly punitive U.S. taxation of non-U.S. source income that doesn't fit in under the foreign earned income exclusion, of which, there are many, many examples. So where the article is, it's sort of pandering to either retirees abroad or possibly digital nomads, that type of person who wants to go abroad for a year. And I would agree that the U.S. tax system works fairly well for digital nomads because of foreign earned income exclusion. But the reason it works well is because they tend to not be tax residents of the country where they're living. Okay. And they are not therefore trying to do their retirement and financial planning under the laws of that other country. And of course, once an American citizen is trying to take advantage of, a TFSA in Canada or an ISA or something in the UK or some kind of, or that thing in New Zealand that we've talked about, once that happens, what their country of residence giveth, if you will, the U.S. tax system taketh. Okay. So, I mean, it really, the title is very misleading. It shouldn't be taxes for the American Abroad 101. It should be taxes for digital nomad or retirees abroad who have no connection with the tax system in the country where they live. That's what the title of it really should be. Anyway, it's, I wish there was something I could say that was nice about the article, but I think it's actually a very damaging and dangerous article.
It's well written. I mean, the grammar's and yeah, it's a tad misleading. And then I think the other thing too, it gives fodder for the. It's telling the wrong story to the American people. It's saying, oh, it's fine to go overseas. Oh, it's another. Hey, look, as an American citizen, look, the world is your oyster. It's not a big deal. And that's the furthest thing from the truth.
From the truth, right?
Our citizenship is the worst citizenship to have in the world. It really is. It really is. The United States of America gives us nothing, but taxes us everything. And we're all divided, and we're allowing it to happen and getting distracted by things like this. Here's a comment, from Suzanne, and then just to echo the point. People see the foreign income exclusion, earned income exclusion, thinks it means that those outside the U.S. pay zero, but
right.
Much depends on the treaties, often things that are common and to one country doesn't exist in the country, thus are taxable. That's one great point there. The foreign income, earned income, and then you have to know what earned income is, right? That's applying to earning income. So someone working at, say, Microsoft in Switzerland for a year, look, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. But if you go to a country and think you're going to have a business, that might be a problem. That might be a huge problem. And it's not going to be so much fun.
Anthony, the message I think for listeners should be, put in very, very simple terms. You really can't move away from the United States permanently and live your life under the tax system of another country without problems. That's the message.
Well, let's get exactly into echo that so that people aren't confused about how terrible your U.S. citizenship is. This is one of the most obnoxious things, unconstitutional things, terrible things, terrifying things is that your passport can be revoked if and denied if you owe taxes. Now, some people say, well, I don't see the big problem with that. Well, okay. All right. Maybe you think, okay, if someone owes a big tax, they should have their passport revoked. Well, let's say that your premise is correct. Well, what's the process by which the United States government is revoking passports? Is there a hearing? Is there an opportunity to present your case before an independent tribunal? No, there's no court. There's no litigation. You're not served. You might not even have notice. That is a fact, and especially if you live overseas, the IRS might not even know where you are, might be sending your bill, and your passport could be revoked, and this happens without your knowledge. Because the IRS is allowed to do this outside of a court through their own administrative nonsense. They're just, we sent some letters and we certified this, we revoked it. This is so bad. This is so bad. And it was passed in 2015, I believe, under the FAST Act. As a way that was going to, generate revenue. But again, all it's done is created horrible, horrible burden on the IRS for something they can't even process. They can't even get to these things. It's overwhelmed the taxpayer advocate. It's overwhelmed everyone. And yet, where are Democrats abroad on this? Where are the Republicans on this? Where's anyone? Where are the courts on this? You're denying someone's passport without due process? This is insane. This is how bad it is. Why wasn't this mentioned in, Taxes 101? By the way, be sure to check your mail because the United States of America could be revoke your passport and they don't even need to send you, they don't need to send you a certified letter. They don't need to send, you're overseas, whatever. Oh, we sent you a notice. Tough. So what about this, Keith? What, I mean, do anyone, where's Democrats abroad on this? Where's anyone?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know at all. Nothing comes out about it as far as what their position is on this. Nothing.
What is it's a right? I mean,
Yeah, I can't even expand on that. It's
by
nothing.
the way, just because your passport is revoked doesn't mean they still don't own you. They can
Right.
revoke your passport and still, again, that doesn't escape you. You're still a U.S. citizen.
Right.
You're still subject to citizen-based taxation. So, wow, it's doesn't really seem to give us a lot. John, your comments?
Okay. First of all, your question, where's Democrats abroad on this? This is an Obama law, okay, along with FATCA, et cetera. And, the simple fact, or I should say the FATCA of the matter is that the Democrats are the party of citizenship, taxation, and FATCA, okay? I mean, by that I mean, their representatives, White House, Warren, et cetera. I mean, these are people who go out and preach the virtues of citizenship. I mean, there's no question. So the answer is, nowhere to be found and probably covering the thing up. But a couple of points on this generally. One, linking this back to a discussion we previously had about the whatever that is, the far right case, the penalties that are no longer accessible, the 5471
Yes.
penalties. Now, that decision has a direct application here, because remember that if the tax debt is over 50,000, I think indexed to inflation, they can just revoke the passport. But if the IRS can't assess penalties in the information return context, the 5471 8938. All right, that is going to allow, what it means is that a much smaller number of people are going to get caught up in this. You see what I'm saying? The IRS cannot impose the $10,000 penalty, which is treated as a tax debt, making it harder to get to the 50,000. So Americans abroad should be very, very happy about that decision that came down for reasons that go beyond the 5471. It's going to make it harder to revoke passports. Secondly, there's been at least one case on this where a passport was revoked, and one of the circuit courts was asked to rule on the question of whether international travel was a fundamental right or whatever, that was being impinged by this. And unsurprisingly, the court came down on the side that Americans have no constitutional rights in that respect. And I think that should be very, very concerning. For what I can't figure out is how these American citizens live and sort of, travel the world imagining that somehow or other being an American citizen gives you enhanced rights, when, I think it's reached the point where, at least among the group of Western first world democracies, I think there's absolutely no question that Americans have generally fewer rights than citizens of other countries. But it's aggravated by the fact that, this is very, very interesting, that the United States of America, that great citadel of freedom and justice, as former Prime Minister Thatcher used to say, actually exports human rights violations outside the country. Things like FATCA, saying, other countries have to change their laws to discriminate against American citizens. I mean, this is unbelievable.
That's a great point, John. Right. So the other, and we're going around the world acting like we're the bastion of liberty and freedom, and our top export is sort of economic terrorism. That's what we have to. That's our contribution to the world. And these other countries that we're claiming, oh, they don't understand. They don't understand rights the way we do.
Well, they don't. That's absolutely right.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, the point, I think another interesting point here is this, that we have all of this is aspirational, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we have sort of an international standard of human rights, aspirational as it may be. But my understanding is that the U.S. government and the courts have interpreted the international standard of rights to be limited by American constitutional rights. Okay, so for example, a due process right, whatever that might mean. I'm not sure this is international human right, but just to make the point, let's say that internationally it has such and such a standard. If the U.S. regards itself as being limited and not being bound by the international standard, but will provide the rights only as limited by the American standard, sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
And first of all, I'm not. Look, let's be clear here, okay? We're talking about this in the context of first world democracies. There is no question that American citizenship is better than citizenship in a lot of countries in the world. There is no question about that, right? But the standard here is not, is there anything worse? But, what should a country that prides itself on democratic principles and freedom aspire to in the 21st century? And if that's the question, I mean, I think it's very, very clear that the U.S. is falling very, very short of that. And it's not that they don't care. More troubling is that they don't care that they don't care.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's a great, again, that's such a great point. And I want to show a comment that I think is pretty relevant here. Ellen LaBelle, this comment here. Wait, where is she? Oh, I clicked the wrong way. Where is it? Wait, oh, there we go. That was Suzanne again here. She's mentioning, to your comment about digital nomads, John. Digital nomads are going to be a big tax problem internationally. They're residing somewhere, not declaring that to that country because they're tourists and not supposed to be working. And her fear is that the argument in countries that do not practice citizenship-based taxation, this might do so, and that Keith, this might be you might know this. She says every few years the idea comes up in France, for example. Keith, have you heard that? Do you think that, or and here's the thing, it's like, who knows if digital nomads really aren't a big problem, but the perception, an enemy. Hey, these are the guys, the digital nomads are the ones who are the reason why, the world is ugly. We got to go after them. Do you think that's true? Do you think do you think other countries will follow suit a little bit and be as ridiculous as the United States of America? Because here it is, maybe America's leading by example here. And this is just how everyone else is going to end up being.
Very well could be. I haven't dealt with a lot of digital nomads personally with the people with whom I speak. So it's hard for me to, personally comment on it. But I can see where it is a problem for different countries. I don't know if they're just being used as the example of why all these things are put into place.
And we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's big enough to get concerned, but maybe at some point.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely a perceptual problem, and I think that it's important for people like us or Americans abroad and digital nomads to get ahead of this issue right away. Now, I think Ellen raises, who I've met, by the way. Hello, Ellen. Who I think raises, a couple of very interesting points here. But I think they should be seen from two perspectives, okay? So we're looking at a digital nomad. A digital nomad from Canada, I have almost no doubt, okay, would find it very, very difficult to officially sever tax residency with Canada, right? Or they could, but that means, it's a lot of work. They're not going to be able to just move abroad, work in another country, and take the position that they're not a Canadian tax resident. The real problem, I think, is less the definition of tax residency and more the international standard of where work income is sourced. Okay. And when you have a situation where income is sourced in the place where the work is done, which is, this is the US law, and I think it's generally, the international standard, regardless of tax residency, right? Sort of thing. It's easy for somebody to take the position that because the work is sourced outside a certain country, then that changes the way it's taxed. Of which, by the way, the foreign earned income exclusion is a very good example of how that principle can be abused. So I think what is more likely is this is an argument for getting rid of the foreign earned income exclusion, isn't it? Right? I think that's what it really is. Not an argument for citizenship taxation, but an argument for getting rid of things like the foreign earned income exclusion.
Yeah. And Ellen has a follow-up question. She there's some comments going on. We have some discussion in the comments, and her comment is Suzanne just indicated, FATCA can apply to a former citizen. And I would just add that, well, in a way, FATCA applies to everybody because all banks are required to do due diligence and investigate every account holder to see if they might be a U.S. person. So in a way, it applies to the world. No one can really escape it. No foreign bank account. They all have to do their due diligence. And then Suzanne actually mentioned something that we probably discussed this in Croatia, but thanks for Suzanne for including this. I do believe that FATCA does apply to former citizens. Wasn't there something like that we were discussing with John?
Yeah. So here's how you would tie these things together, right? So the Model U.S. Tax Treaty incredibly now includes a clause that the United States has the right to tax former citizens, right? Which would mean that the former citizens could theoretically still be U.S. tax residents, and if that's the case, then yes, of course, FATCA would continue to apply to them. All right, because they would be treated as U.S. residents, even if not citizens.
Mm.
So, yeah, this is a gigantic problem. And where this comes back to, is the problem of, I think, largely the savings clause and all this sort of stuff. I think of these in the moment are more theoretical problems than real problems. But what they do is they reduce the number of levers available to people who are complaining about this stuff. For example, well, you can't tax me. I'm not a citizen anymore. And the U.S. Treasury, the IRS says, well, you live in Croatia. What are you talking about? Look at this treaty here.
Yeah.
It specifically says this. So, look, the bottom line is this. This is so absolutely critical, is that people shouldn't, as interesting as the symptoms of this problem are, whether they're banking access or PFIC or this, that, and the other thing, it's all rooted in U.S. citizenship taxation. And therefore, the focus must be on getting rid of that, because if that's gone, then the whole house of cards comes down.
Right. That's the genesis of the problem. That's the genesis.
Why, these various groups, that are posturing for changes in the taxation of Americans abroad, I think would be well advised to focus on getting rid of citizenship as a condition, as a sufficient condition for tax residency, rather than, trying to nibble around the edges and just say, well, we love citizenship taxation, and therefore we want to make it better.
Right. Well, I think this is, here's a comment, another follow-up from Ellen with the hypothetical. So Canadian YouTuber would be taxed by the U.S. source income, maybe by Canada, but not Mexico, where he's spending the winter in Baja producing his content. And seems about right to me.
I don't know what the rules are for tax residency in Mexico. I think that's entirely possible.
Right. That seems about right.
Yeah. But here's the point, right? It says Canadian be taxed by the U.S. source, maybe by Canada, right? Under the rules in the Internal Revenue Code and under, various treaties, the point is that income is sourced, okay, where the work has actually been done. And, and that does have implications on how much tax people end up paying. But anyway, yeah, possibly.
All right. I want to now, this is, I think, my little call to action here. I don't know if people share this, but it's just like we're lying to ourselves about what America is. And that's where, I had to have my own awakening on this. Many of the things that were uncomfortable, I realized. This is the thing you need to understand about Republicans. They're not on your side. They're not. I am still a registered Republican. And just sort of as I go down the history, you find things that aren't so helpful. Republicans are the founders of citizenship-based taxation. That's a fact. Okay. The Revenue Act of 1862. That's where it comes into place. And, a lot of things about Abraham Lincoln aren't really what we're led to believe. And really, what I see, and I don't think I'm alone on this, is Republicans merely use the Democrats as their source of agitation so they can fundraise. And you donate to one political candidate and you see how it goes. You'll get the follow-up emails. Do you see what the Democrats are doing? Donate $25 now. Do you see what they're doing? And that's all they do, because look, as soon as the Republicans are in power and they can fix these things, they don't. They don't. And instead we get abominations like the transition tax that President Trump, unfortunately, signed into law. And that's a fact. And then on the other side of it, we have this mythology that just drives me nuts, that Democrats are the party of the little guy. And they push that and they push that. And all these little guys, it's like, will you wake up? Will you wake up to see that you're actually abused? Sure, the Democrats were once the party of the little guy. And I would probably go back to Andrew Jackson to find that Democrat. I'd probably have to go back that far to find one that was that good. But really, it's this weird thing. It's where they convince little guys that, well, yeah, hey, you're being treated by garbage, but you know what? That's a good thing, because we don't want to give Republicans, any political victory. If you don't accept being treated like garbage, that's a victory for the Republicans. And through this dynamic, that's what it is. They're using each other to both parties have gotten stronger and stronger. And look how weak we've gotten. Look at what happens to us during this stupid bipartisan or this squabbling. It's more than squabbling. It's a design to totally remove all of our rights. So that's my feeling on that. I don't.
Yeah, I did. Anthony, I deal with the little guys all the time. John does as well. You do as well. And they're being just, the little guys that I'm dealing with are those who are living outside the United States that have to deal with this U.S. citizenship situation. And they're being destroyed. And this is not hyperbole. They are being destroyed. So absolutely. Who's helping them? Neither party.
Yeah. John, anything to add?
Well, look, the problem is that the American political process is really just a playground for the political parties to wage war against each other. Neither party cares about individual citizens anymore, and has not for many, many years. And, this is the basic problem, is that the only real purpose that individual citizens have is just to vote like a trained seal. And as long as they continue to do this, all this Democrats abroad advertising 24/7. Oh, vote for the, whatever. This is ridiculous stuff. Look at that election in Democrats abroad France, where the one person who made, I think it was Jeff Steiner, right? One person who made the abolition of citizenship taxation, FATCA, the priority, was not elected. Okay, in that election by Democrats abroad France. And, that speaks for itself. Okay, yeah. Absolutely, positively. There's absolutely no doubt that now Republicans overseas has really no presence overseas. Okay, they really should. Okay. But the idea that Democrats abroad exist to somehow further the interests of Americans abroad is absolutely laughable. And what should be happening is that people should be not voting and explaining why they're not voting, or put in a write-in candidate. On that point, as I said before, Anthony, I think that you and Keith ought to set yourself up a platform to run as president and vice president.
There we go.
Because that could be the way that Americans abroad could vote for somebody who is sympathetic to their interests and express, to the existing political parties, their absolute disgust on this matter. But as it stands now, I think that, Americans abroad should probably consider themselves lucky, because they're in a position where they can renounce many of them, because they have dual citizenship. Think of the poor people left behind in the United States.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, we're stuck. We're stuck as Americans in America. Another comment. Suzanne adding in here. Outside of a very few politicians, they have no idea that one could be a regular Joe living outside the U.S. and what is being done is wrong. But in the end, neither party is willing to end this. And I think this is okay. I want to just quote a John Richardson quote. It's not that they don't care. It's that they don't care that they don't care. Is what I would say that. I want to conclude today. Our good friend Fabian was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and this is what I want to conclude with today. This was very, very fascinating, and we have the link to it behind the paywall. Thank you for that. And so this is amazing of what happened. So the Wall Street Journal is this should be pretty good. Okay, the word is getting out. And talk about look, I would say Thomas Jefferson is one of my favorite. I think Thomas Jefferson, he actually did the things he said he was going to do. This is what he said, and this is a really, bless Fabian for the French citizen for knowing this better than most Americans, right? Thomas Jefferson wrote in a 1779 Virginia statute recognizing that natural right which all men have of relinquishing the country in which birth or other accident may have thrown them. The U.S. should embrace that principle and make it easy for accidental Americans to renounce their citizenship. And Fabian's just talking about accidental Americans, but this is just, this is how insane the law is, that even someone who was accidentally born an American because their parents were American and while they were here, didn't recognize, moved back to their country, they are still treated exactly like 100% someone who has been living in America. And it's been incredibly difficult for people who are accidental Americans. And this is just just exposes the complete, I don't know if what the word be, fraud that our U.S. citizenship is, that people who don't want it have a hard time getting rid of it. You know what that's called? That's like trash, right? Like garbage. Like, oh, you know what? I don't want this. I want to get rid of it. So do you see that? Like, wait a second. If American citizenship is a good thing, and people like Fabian were born with accidental Americans, well, they should be rejoicing. Oh my God, I'm so lucky. Somehow, through some stroke of luck, I was born an American parents, even though they're French and moved back to France, and I have this gold card. Look at what I have. He should be shouting from the tops. He should be shouting from the top of the Eiffel Tower. This.
But just remember, Anthony, the reason why they don't want their unwanted U.S. citizenship is not the fact that they're deemed U.S. citizens. It's all tied up into citizenship-based taxation. That is the reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
You see what I mean? It would not matter at all. It's because of the U.S. linking its citizenship with tax residency. And that's the whole problem. And all these people, all these segments of the populations are being so harmed as a result.
Absolutely.
Let me read in the comment I put on the article. I think it's, maybe a good way to come to an end today. And definitely, obviously, I recommend reading the article. But here's my comment. A good article, but difficult for American residents to fully understand or appreciate. What Mr. Lahagra describes is a perfect example of America's penchant for a love of laws coupled with a blind patriotism and belief in the justice of American laws. Resident Americans don't understand that all is required to see their own future is to see how the USA treats its citizens abroad. As noted in some of the other comments, the author understates the problems of being subject to the tax systems of two countries. Many of the Biden Green Book proposals, including the reporting of bank accounts to the IRS, are already applied to Americans abroad. Those patriotic Americans who believe that the U.S. can do no wrong would do well to remember what the great American writer Mark Twain said: patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. Consider the following. Most countries do not confer citizenship based only on birth in the country. 2, There are only 2 countries in the world that impose worldwide taxation based on citizenship. 3, the United States is the only country in the world that does both.
Wow, that's beautifully said. Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a fantastic place to end today. John, thank you. That was one of the clearest statements I've heard. And yeah, if you want to know your future, American citizens living in the U.S., look abroad. Thank you. I want to thank Keith Redman and John Richardson so much today. This is Anthony Parent for Iris Medic. I thank you for watching.